This time on the show, I got someone completely different from one of my teammates. This person is someone who has been a part of UK sports for years and years, many years, even before I got to Kentucky. But before I introduce him, make sure you subscribe to the Field of 68 Media Network group. Also subscribe to the Bernard Turner Show. And make sure you follow on YouTube and also Twitter. And we're also on Instagram. But back to my guest, definitely great to have him on the show. He was someone, like I said before, who covered UK basketball for years and years and years. Unfortunately, he came to do the play-by-play for UK after I left, but I got the likes to meeting him when I came back and finished my degree. This guy was the two-time winner of the prestigious Eclipse Award for excellence in sports. He was also the six-time winner of Sportscaster of the Year Award for Kentucky. And I mean, just an amazing commentator. I've actually learned a lot from him just by being interviewed from him. And definitely love to listen to him cover UK basketball sports, because he knows what he's talking about, and that's why I have him on my show today. But no other than, you probably know him from the Leach Report, no other than Tom Leach
Wayne,
on
how
my
goes
show
it?
today. Thanks for coming on the show, Tom. I appreciate it.
You are very welcome. I'll tell you one quick story. This time, probably about a week after this, a year ago, when everything was gone, one of the first sporting events I watched, they were replaying all this stuff. I rewatched the '92 Kentucky Duke game that CBS showed, and then I rewatched the better one, which was the '98 Kentucky Duke game, and got to see you abuse Wojo repeatedly. And so I'm just really excited to be watching games that aren't on replay now to get ready for this tournament.
I know. I always during March every year since I've graduated, I always get a text message. Hey, you was on TV today. I saw you on Classic Sports. And I'm like, really? Wow, they're still playing these games, huh? I guess I'm still popular and people still remember me. So
Kentucky fans have never.
I love the replays, Tom.
Me too.
But definitely happy to have you on the show. Unfortunately for the cast this year, as we all know from bracketology on Sunday selection, the Cats did not get in the tournament. And it was a tough year for them, having a losing record at the end of the year. What was your take just on the team itself? I mean, it seemed like they started to actually pull it together at some points, like they were going to make a run. But then that one next game will come, and then they'll fall backwards. So that was kind of confusing and frustrating for me as a former player and fan. But, looking, at other people's views like yours, I wonder how you felt about that or what you thought.
I know back early, I do the games with Mike Pratt, the former Kentucky player, not just played here, played in the pros, coached in the pros. And so I respect his opinion a lot. From the beginning, he never thought the pieces seemed to fit together great. And that may have been, because they didn't get the chance to get to know each other as they normally would. This was the worst possible year for Cal to have his newest team. And I say newest because it wasn't all freshmen. You had a couple of grad transfers that come in. So they had a little experience there, but they were still new. So the Keon Brooks is the only holdover, and then he gets hurt and doesn't play until January. And they only had one game. And then Terrence Clark was a guy they thought might be able to play some point for them, where they had issues as the season played out. He got hurt and was out from the end of December till the very last game. For those, that last game was the only time they had all of their pieces together. And, without having the summer, without having all the games in November that they would normally have, they just never did get to mesh like you would like a team to do. And you look around the country, a lot of the better seasons have been had by teams that had a lot of experience. Alabama's a good example in this league. They had, I think, their top 8 guys back. And the teams that were new and young really seemed to struggle under these conditions. And so that was part of it. And then I think the challenge for Cal, he talked a little bit about this on his radio show that wrapped up the season on Monday night. Some things he's got to look at. He talked about how the game's changing with the transfer rule, with name, image, and likeness, and then he also made an interesting comment about that the game's moving more toward maybe a greater emphasis on skill and a little lesser emphasis on athleticism. So he's got to decide how to incorporate that into his program and any changes or tweaks he wants to make, along with the fact of getting back to normal. I think things will just be better for that reason. This team would have been better had they had the normal circumstances, but I still think they had some issues that would have cropped up for them even under a normal setup.
Right. No, I agree. One of the things I know my freshman year, even though it's different now, I was able to come to Kentucky for at least 2 or 3 weeks, get an idea of what it was going to be like for my start in August. And these guys, they have the opportunity to go in June and July and be there and basically practice with the team and also take classes. And, I think that being delayed and them not having that extra time definitely affected their chemistry a whole lot.
All those new guys,
guys.
The freshmen, there are things to learn. We were Mike and I were chatting with Tony Delk. He was in the broadcast spot right next to us down at the SEC tournament, and we were talking about some of this stuff. And he said it took him a while. And I'm sure you can will nod your head at this. He said it took me a while to understand that high school hard, in terms of playing hard, was different from college playing hard. I thought I was really playing hard, and the coach kept getting on me, and it took me a while to understand what he really meant.
Oh yeah, I definitely felt that when I got to college because you walked around a lot in high school. You really didn't have, when you're the stud, you really don't have to play as hard on defense.
Yeah. And they don't want you to get in foul trouble.
Exactly. And that I tell, the younger generation, younger kids that transition from high school to college, like now you go from playing kids your age to grown men, and the strength level is totally different. I mean, I came in as a freshman. Tony Delk was a senior. He was the strongest God I had ever faced in my life at that point. And I realized, hey, strength and conditioning is very, very important, moving up in levels, in this sport. So moving forward, like I was saying a little earlier, these teams that got pretty much rejected from the tournament, and obviously Louisville was one of those. And someone made a joke. I mean, I don't know how to ask this question, but Mitch Barnhart was on the committee, and obviously a lot of fans think that his decision impacted them not being in the tournament and felt like they should have. Not to harp on Louisville, but what do you make of that? I mean, I don't think that's something that he can do.
No, and I don't think that's if anybody that knows Mitch, that's not the way he would operate. He would be a pro in doing his job, and he's just one of many people on that committee. He's the guy you have to have somebody in charge, so he's the guy that says, okay, it's time to vote or it's time to do this or whatever. But you got a lot of pretty equal voices, I would think, in that committee, given the people that are on it. So, it was, ironic that his year to be the spokesman, being the chairman, was coincided with the year that Louisville doesn't make it. So you knew that was going to be a talking point, but I think that's about all there was to it.
Yeah. Do you think they should have got him?
I thought they would. Yeah. I mean, I didn't go that as far as should they have. I didn't go that deep into comparing resumes, but I certainly thought that they were in when the bracket was revealed in the last page they get to, Michigan State and UCLA's 11. My first thought was, Louisville may be in trouble, but maybe they'll be a 10 seed, because I'd seen they were projected at 10 by a few people in some of the bracket projections. And then I think that last slot, that last 10 went to Maryland. So I really thought they would make it. I thought they might be in the first four. I kind of thought, at first glance, I think I probably would have voted them in over Wichita State, for example, maybe even Drake. Those two teams that are in the first four game. But they lost some opportunities to play games because of a couple of COVID pauses that would have, probably gotten them a few more wins.
Yeah, I thought that. I honestly thought they should have gotten as well. Being an ACC team, I mean,
Yeah.
ACC has always been tough.
I mean, Georgia Tech won the league tournament, and Louisville handled them pretty easily.
Right, exactly. And I know, I didn't. I think people was just looking for a story with Mitch being a part of
Yeah,
it, not getting it.
exactly.
But before I jump into the tournament, I read some interesting things about yourself, and one of your dreams was to be, a commentator and do play-by-play, which is interesting to me because I don't think I've ever met anyone um, who wanted to do broadcasting and commentating. And I know it was passed down to you generational wise, but how'd you take that on? When did you decide, okay, I'm gonna do play by play for Kentucky?
Yeah, I grew up in a little town about half hour north of Lexington, Paris, and we just played everything, whatever sport was in season, we played it. So I mean, I grew up loving sports. My dad was a good baseball player, and my brother was a good football player. So I kind of came to the love of sports naturally. And somewhere in there, in middle school, we had a teacher that started an in-school newscast, and so I lobbied to get to do the sports reports on those newscasts. And so that was probably where the seed was maybe planted. And then I always tell students when I talk to groups in high school or college, when I graduated high school in 1979, that was the year that ESPN started. So now everything's on TV. But when I was growing up as a sports fan in the 70s, you listened to more games like for Kentucky or for the Reds. You listened to more games of the teams that I followed most closely than you got to see. And so I kind of fell in love with the idea of being the guy that would be in the Kaywood Ledford's chair, that would be at the games. And then Ralph Hacker was working with him. And so that was kind of where I set my sights, not really probably fully appreciating how narrow that target was to hit. But I got to work on Ralph's team at the radio station in Lexington in the mid 80s. And he kind of helped groom me to be in a position where I'd had a chance to maybe get this job. And unfortunately, it worked out.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've been a part of 4 Final Fours. You got to do that. You 11 bowl games for Kentucky. Which one of those Final Fours were your favorite Final Fours? If you can
Well,
remember them.
naturally, you would think the championship, and that's special because when you're the play-by-play guy at Kentucky, you figure that there's a chance you may get to cover it, to call a championship. They're hard to win, but Kentucky's won enough of them that you figure, if you do the job long enough, you at least get a chance to do it once. And so that was really special. But I think it was more so the first one was maybe a little as special the year before because I had covered the team when I was working for Ralph's station in the 90s. And so I got to go to cover the 93 team that went to the Final Four, and then the 96, 97, 98 teams. You guys made those runs. I got to go and cover it. So that was great fun. And then, they've been to 4 Final Fours in the 90s. And in 2002, I get to start doing the play-by-play. I think, well, surely there's going to be one, and sometime here soon. And Kentucky was the number one seed in 03 and 04. And 03, Bogans gets hurt, and they come up short there. And in 04, they got upset. And so finally, by the time 11 had rolled around, it had been since 98 that Kentucky had been to a Final Four, and they upset Ohio State. And so to get to work the Final Four as a play-by-play guy for the very first time was that 2011 season. So that was real special.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize that. I was on that staff 2011, so
Yeah.
it was really fun in
And,
Houston.
that was a team that was, you know, I held out hope for this team, kind of trying to figure it out at some point. You hope that they would, because, that team, you guys, I had gone back and looked at one point, and Kentucky, coming into about the last week of the regular season, had lost every one possession game, all these close games. They never could win one. But once they finally did, then Brandon Knight kind of got in that role, and they started winning all the close games, and had a great shot to win the title. I mean, I think Liggins had a shot in the air. If that goes, you beat UConn, and I think they would have beat Butler.
Exactly, because he hit the one.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to live with it. He hit the one against North Carolina.
Yep.
We definitely thought that one was going in, and just came up one point short. But yeah, that year was I mean, it was a tough year on the road. Those guys were still young, and it was the free Ennis era. Ennis Cantor couldn't play that year, and there was a lot of adversity for that team. And I was happy to see them pull it out, and happy to be a part of that team, because they faced a lot of adversity, but the way they rallied together and handled it, won the SEC tournament. It was very, very sweet. Going back to Atlanta, Catlanta as we call it, and winning that championship with that team. But that's interesting to know that that was your first Final Four, and I'm glad you got to experience that with
Yeah,
us.
it was fun. It was,
Too bad we didn't get the goal, but hey, it was a great run. Beating
it was a fun one.
Ohio State was
That
amazing.
Ohio State up there in Newark, and Josh Harrelson. Kind of, you mentioned Ennis Cantor. When Ennis didn't get to play, it kind of opened the door for Josh to get to play a role that he probably would not have had, and then he really took advantage of it and outplayed Sullinger that night and beat Ohio State. That was quite that was a really fun team to follow, the way they kind of gelled at the end and made that run.
Right. Now, I got to ask you this question because you've seen them both. What team is better? 1996, 2012. Which team you're taking?
You know, I think the best single individual player was AD, uh, of the two teams. It's I'll get out of it a little bit. I would say, I'll say this. I would probably have to give the edge to 96. But the 96 team was at a time when players stayed longer. And so you had all those seniors on that team. And you had the young guys that were coming up that were going to be national championship good, like Da and Ron the next year, and then yourself and Shep and Paget and all those guys in '98. All those guys were in that '96 team. So I mean, that gives you an idea of the talent collectively. And then by 2012, you got so we're into the one and done era, and so nobody stayed around until their senior year that was of that level of talent. So you can't fairly compare them, but if you had to pick between the two, I'd probably have to give the edge to 96, just because of the experience and the depth of talent that they had. While saying, in fairness to 2012, that those guys, it was a time when teams were built differently. So if that team had stayed around where those guys were seniors, might have a different answer.
No, I agree. We definitely were experienced in our depth.
Yeah.
I just think our depth was crazy. Like you
I mean,
can
like I
really,
say, you look at the guys that were, the ninth, 10th, 11th man on that team were starters on national championship teams.
true, very, very true. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate your opinion on that. Um, well, I think you already answered my next question, so I'll move on.
All right.
Um, Actually, you know what? Who do you think is the best player in Cal's era so far?
I think it would have to be Anthony. Uh, he dominated the game from the start of the year defensively, and then really once he kind of got into February, he just was getting better offensively week to week. And so I think, he would have to be at the top of the list. The best team might have been the 15 team. Um, but they were a little like the 96 group, what we were talking about there. Just, Derek Willis and Dominique Hawkins were the 11th and 12th guys from that team. Um, but it was still much younger than the 96. But one player, I think it would have to be Anthony Davis.
I like that answer. I'm a John Wall fan. I like DeMarcus Cousins. He came on a little late on that team. I thought that team was definitely a Final Four team.
Oh yeah.
Personally, they ran into West Virginia and couldn't make a shot.
There
But
are some people I think that feel like that if you rank Cal's teams, you might rank them 15, 10, and 12. But 12 won the title. Um, it's an interesting debate to have, but I mean that group in 10. I mean, if they hadn't run into that West Virginia 1-3-1, I think they win the national championship. It was a bad matchup on a bad night.
yeah, I definitely agree. And we man, just couldn't put it in the hole. But I enjoyed watching that team that whole year. I was very fortunate to be able to watch practices and got a chance to run up and down with Eric and John, and they showed me how slow I was as an older player, but definitely a fun team to watch. And they do rank high on my list in Cal's era. So you've, I kind of saw you covered um, thoroughbred racing.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is the guy I need to call for all my bets during the dirt. Yeah.
Either know who to bet on or who to not bet on.
how,
I
how, how does that differ from sports? Like, I mean, I know that's sports, but how does it differ from basketball,
well, the
football?
easiest answer is you don't get to interview the athletes, the horses. But I growing up in Paris. We had Claiborne Farm, very famous thoroughbred farm, where Secretariat lived out his retirement, and that was a big deal for our community. So I got exposed to racing early, became a fan. So have always enjoyed covering it. It's it's the thing that's really different, and this is changing a little bit now. You got so many media sources out there, but for most of my time covering racing, you didn't. It was a sport that didn't get nearly as much coverage as basketball, football, baseball, and so the athletes and the coaches in the sports that get the abundance of the attention probably, well, I don't say probably, they do get tired of the questions and the endless interviews and the coverage and all the stuff. Whereas racing is for the most part really welcomed it because they're looking to gain more eyeballs and ears on their sport, and so yeah, people are eager to to give you interviews and chances to do some different creative things, putting the camera on the jockey's helmet or whatever it might be. Whereas in some of the other sports, they get covered so much that they get a little tired of it. So I've always enjoyed the the access you still get to racing is still better. It's more like what it used to be, and the other major sports where you can walk out at if I'm covering the Derby, I can walk out on the backside at Churchill Downs that week and just walk up to Bob Baffert's barn and maybe get an interview. And that kind of thing doesn't happen much in the major sports anymore.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I was very curious about that. I've gotten a little addicted to the betting on the ponies.
It's fun. It's that's I love handicapping and love going out. Um, I would say for me, it's kind of like where some guys go play golf on the weekend. I'd rather go like handicap the races on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm in Louisville, so I miss those downs after dark nights.
Oh yeah, fun.
Very low key, go there, place a bet, and watch the races.
It's a great thing. Racing is a great sport to enjoy with a group. You go out and sometimes you can make bets together, or rooting against each other's horses, or you're just having a good time. So it's a great, I think, sport socially.
Well, thanks for sharing. It is. It definitely is. I definitely have a good time every time I go out. Well, I'm gonna turn the tables back to basketball. There was one more question about UK history,
Okay.
and I know you've been around it for a long, long time. And I was asking you questions about the best players, Cal's era. Who was the best player you've seen basketball in UK's history play? Who do you think the best player is, in your opinion?
I've seen play. Yeah, didn't Issel was
Ones you saw play.
yeah, Issel's a little bit. I remember watching their last game when they lost to Artis Gilmore's Jacksonville team. I can remember watching that, but as far as I was, 9 at the time, so that would, probably everything after that is when I really started getting into it. So in that time, I'm just thinking there's so many of them here. Mashburn's one of the first ones that comes to mind. He was, tremendous. Goose, Jack Gibbons, great, great college basketball player. Um, yeah, maybe Mash might. It's close. Just you know, right off the top of my head, you asked me the question. That's kind of probably the first one that would pop to mind of watching them. Mash or Anthony Davis, or John Wall. Those probably are and Goose. Those four. Think of a starting five, and throw one more in there. Maybe Sam Bowie. When he was healthy, he might have been the best of all of them at full strength. Um, he was ahead of his time in terms of his skill set. Um, but Mash or AD, kind of a toss up there for me.
Okay, I would agree with that. Mashburn definitely always stands out in my head, and also John Wall is the other one, because he's a guard, point guard. I've
Yeah,
always thought it was tough for a guard to be out there on the perimeter chasing guys around, but then turn around,
so fast.
go full speed, on a fast break. I think that's what impressed me so much about John.
John and Mashburn, they had one thing in common too, because when Cal got here, Kentucky'd been down for a while by its standards, and John Wall was the guy who led that resurgence back. And Mash was kind of the same thing in the early '90s. There, when he came on board, is when Kentucky came out of a hole, and those two guys, were both, beyond what happened on the court. That impact that they had kind of factors into the decision too.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Who in your time of play by play was the hardest coach to interview?
Oh, and no question, Billy Gillespie. uh, he was just, you know, uh, an odd guy at times. I've told people, and I don't know if they actually believe it, because we had some strange on-air interviews, but we actually got along much better than it may have sounded at times. And to cycle back to something we were talking about earlier, because he was is such a big thoroughbred racing fan. And so once he found out I knew something about racing, we had something to kind of connect on, and we would always constantly be talking during commercial breaks or things about thoroughbred racing, and horses coming up to the Derby, or whatever it might be. So he knows his racing really well, and but he was a challenging guy to interview at times.
Any crazy things he did?
Oh gosh, yeah. One I can remember just off the top of my head, and this is kind of, you just never knew where it was going to go. Sometimes they were playing somebody at Rupp early in the season. Good team, can't remember who. Doris Burke was in to do the game for ESPN, and I'm waiting to do my pregame interview for radio. And one of the sports information people said, "Would you mind if Doris talks to him first, because she's got to get back to a meeting?" I said, "Sure, no problem. I'll stand here and wait." So I'm listening to the conversation, and he's talking about how Jody Meeks and Derek Jasper had been out of practice, and they it made it difficult to accomplish what they needed to get done in practices, because they'd had these guys in and out. And so then, Billy comes over, we start the pregame. And I thought, well, I'll just start with that question since, they were talking about that. I thought, in my own head, I think that'd be a good place to kind of start out the interview. It's like, well, coach, had Derek and Jody out of practices a lot lately. How's that impacted what you've been able to get accomplished? Well, I don't know why you bring that up. We don't make excuses. Like you just told her that it was an issue for you. So that was a little strange. So, I learned with Billy too, you had to, with Cal, you can say how you're doing. You might get a 10-minute answer on a pregame show. With Billy, if you could answer, if you couldn't ask a question that could be answered yes or no, because he'd probably answer it yes or no. So you play zone today against Alabama, it would be, what would you think about maybe using some zone? And then he would, give you his explanation of why he might consider that. Well, that's a bad example because he'd never played zone. But anyway, you had to ask a question that couldn't be answered yes or no.
Wow, because he would answer it yes or no.
Most times.
That's crazy.
It makes it hard to do about a 9 or 10-minute interview that we needed for the UK network. I remember one time interviewing Coach Mummy in football, and we had a great relationship, but he was watching a JV game and was more interested in that than he was in doing this interview with me. But we had a really good relationship. And so first segment, I asked him a bunch of questions because everything was a short answer. And then after the first segment, we stopped to get ready to do the next segment. And I said, Hal, they tell me I got to get 9 minutes so I could ask you 10 questions or 100. And he laughed and got the point I was making. And then he was, fine. He's like, let me just finish this and you'll get out of here. And then he did, and I
did. Well, that made it easy. Well, I'm gonna move forward. Probably got another few questions just about the tournament. Okay. I know we saw bracketology on Sunday, and just wanted to know your biggest shock of bracketology and your biggest surprise.
Gosh, nothing really jumped out at me like, wow, I didn't see that coming. Louisville not being in, maybe. I really thought they would, get in. And then, but as far as, where teams were seated, I thought it all looked pretty good. You always debate a few things. Really, the strangest thing is just to look at the bracket and not see Kentucky or Duke or Louisville or Indiana. So that was the strangest part of it for me.
Do you have any favorites?
Gonzaga looks awfully good. They, maybe I don't know if they can complete being a perfect season. It would be something that hadn't been done since '76. But the few times I have watched them play at length, where they are really good, got a good mix of old guys and young guys. I really like what Juwan Howard has done at Michigan. I always wonder what, when players come back into coach that haven't been a coach before, or a head coach before, how's that going to work? And I thought he made a really good hire, and a guy like Phil Martelli, who had a lot of head coaching experience to kind of help him, get all the boxes checked that he would need to as a head coach, because obviously he knew the game, but just there's a lot of other things that go into it. So I thought he really, put a staff together well. I've been impressed. And so hated to see the Livers kid get hurt, but Michigan. And then I'm rooting for Florida State a little bit, I think, because I don't know Leonard Hamilton, but, Oscar Combs, other folks around the Kentucky program that have been around it for years, just adore Leonard. And so that tells me he's a good guy. And so I would like to see him get to a Final Four, win a championship. Probably had a great shot to do it last year and then didn't get the chance. So I would love to see them get to a Final Four. And then Preston Spradlin's a friend at Morehead State, so I'd love to see them, pull off an upset against West Virginia and shock the world and have their moment. So those are a few of the thoughts. But Gonzaga looks like a pretty solid favorite to me. I do think there are going to be a lot of upsets, though. I think Gonzaga and those 2 or 3 Big Ten teams that are up there at the top, and Baylor. But from say 5 or 6 down to 35 or 40, I don't know if there's a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, it looks like a open field.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely no fanfare. So it's kind of even keel. But I was really impressed with Michigan and the job Jawan Howard has done being a former player. I know that has to feel great. And they look just good all around on the tables. A
Illinois
little
looks
shocking they
like they're
lost to
playing
Ohio
well,
State.
and Orlando Antigua, I know from his time here at Kentucky, so I'd love to see Coach O get to a Final Four with Illinois, and they look like they're playing their best basketball. So I haven't actually filled out my bracket yet. The only time I've won the contest that I get in every year was the one year, 2013, when Kentucky wasn't in it. So I'm hoping that means I've got a good shot to win again this year.
Right.
Takes my bias out of it when Kentucky's not in it, maybe.
Right, exactly. What was your favorite March Madness moment? I know you was at that 2012 championship, but do you
Yeah,
have
that's probably would be at the top of the list as far as experiencing it in person. Um, that to call to be in a to be a play-by-play guy and call a championship for the school you're covering. So that would be at the top of the list. Um, I'm trying to think. The first year I got to go on the road and cover the team was '93, and they beat Wake Forest in the Sweet 16 just unmercifully, just raining down threes. And it's a good Wake Forest team at Rodney Rogers. So that was kind of fun to, be on the road covering the team for the first time. And that's the first game you cover. But certainly, in terms of, being the UK announcer, the 2012 championship season would be right there at the top of the list.
what do you make about Patino getting Iona into the
Not surprised that he pulled that off. And plus, Iona's, got a pretty good tradition. I mean, they go back to Jim Valvano in the '70s, so they've had, some good teams. Tim Cluse, I think was his name, had a pretty good run there for a while. So they've been to the tournament several times. So, Rick went into a program there that has been used to winning, and then you put him in charge of the program. He's obviously exceptional at what he does. So I certainly can't say I'm surprised he has his team in the tournament, and that's going to be one of the more fun first round games to watch for them against Alabama.
I got them upset in Alabama.
I wouldn't put it past them. I watched some of the games in that MAAC tournament. Didn't watch his team a lot during the season, so excuse me, I'm gonna look at it a little more closely before I make a pick. But if I'm an Alabama fan, I'm not resting real easily knowing that Rick's there on the other side.
Right, yeah, that's got to be a itchy little feeling for the coach over
Mhm.
there, not knowing what to expect from Coach Pitino. He got a lot of different schemes. Well, I'm not gonna hold you too much longer. I got one more question, and
Okay.
this is for me. Just as a broadcaster, as a commentator, you have your favorite team sometimes, and you're doing the game. Like, how hard is that to commentate a game of a team that you're pretty much biased towards? Like, how
Yeah,
do
I
you
mean,
deal with that?
I always go back to something Kaywood Ledford, the great Kaywood Ledford. Had a chance, fortunately, I was on the broadcast team as doing the scoreboard show and some post game, pregame stuff near the end of his run as the legendary announcer here at Kentucky, and so I got a chance to visit with Kaywood some, and he said it is okay if you're covering a team. If you're working for CBS, you don't want to be biased one way or the other, but if you're covering a team game in and game out throughout a whole season of one team, it's okay if your audience knows that you want to see that team win because they all do. You're broadcasting to the preaching to the choir, as the saying goes. But he said you have to, while doing that, give your audience a fair and accurate description of how the team's playing. If they're playing poorly, don't sugarcoat it or blame it on somebody else or officials or whatever. Tell your audience the real story, but it's perfectly understandable and okay for your audience to know that you want to see Kentucky win if you're the Kentucky announcer. So I've always just tried to follow his lead and Ralph Hacker's lead, Jim Host. Those are three guys that have been the most influential in my career, and they all had the same kind of message: is just be really well prepared, and then just be a pro. And so you get excited, and I tend to get more excited probably than Kaywood did, but that's just, you've got to be true to your own personality. But I just try to be a pro like the guys before me were, and want to see Kentucky win, but want to be doing a good job for the audience and not get so excited about the team winning that you forget to give the score or some other key facts, or get caught up in the game too much to not do your job.
Well, there you have it, folks. The voice of Kentucky basketball. Great to have him on the show. Make sure you subscribe to the Field of 68 Media Network Group. Watch this interview on YouTube. You can check it out on Instagram and Twitter, Spotify. The voice of Kentucky, Tom Leach. Great to have you on the show. Thank you.
I'm happy to do it. I don't know if you in the corner here in the office, there's like a Kentucky jersey hanging up there. You'll appreciate this. That was given to me by Mr. Kitely, Mr.
Wow. Wow.
So that's a prized possession.
That's awesome. That's a great guy. I miss that guy so much.
Yeah, we all do. I would go down to do the pregame shows, and I'd get there a little early, and he was usually about the only one there a lot of times. And so I'd talk to him usually about one of two things: the Reds, Cincinnati Reds, or Kentucky high school basketball.
Wow.
Missed those visits. But enjoyed this one. Enjoyed talking with you, Wayne.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate your time. You have a good vacation.
Thanks.
All right.
Enjoy the tournament.
Thank you.